Kids English Time. Let us now have our third lesson entitled Passive and Active Voices. To make this topic easier to understand, kindly click the link on the description box below for part 1. Let us now proceed to our discussion. Passive and active voices are also called as voice of the verb. What do we mean by this? The voice of the verb tells whether the subject of the sentence performs or receives the action. Performs, receives. These are the two words you must remember for the entire lesson. We have two types of voice of the verb. We have active and passive voice. Let us first have a discussion about active voice. When we say active voice, we are talking about the normal voice. These are the sentences that we normally use in our daily lives, wherein the subject performs the action. Again, the subject performs the action.
For example, Stella baked the cookies. Let us first identify the parts of the sentence. Who is our subject? Our subject is Stella. What about the action word? Our action word or our verb is baked. Stella baked what? Stella baked the cookies. And this is our object. So the pattern for active voice is subject plus verb plus object. And the subject performs the action.
What about the passive voice? When we say passive voice, the subject receives the action. Again, the subject receives the action.
For example, the cookies were baked by Stella. What have you noticed in our given example? It has the same words just like in our previous sentence, but we're not in the same order. Let us analyze the given example. We have here the cookies, our object, baked, our verb, and Stella, our subject. However, we inserted a helping verb, where. And the preposition by to complete the sentence. And here is the pattern for the passive voice. Object plus helping verb plus preposition by plus subject.
But this pattern was made for you to easily understand the difference between the active and passive voice, wherein they are just switching their positions. Now let us have a review on the meaning of the word subject. A subject is the person, place, thing, or idea that the sentence is about. Now let us read the sentence again. The cookies were baked by Stella. What is the topic or the subject of the sentence? It is now the cookies. It does not perform the action, but it receives the action word baked. In passive voice, the subject receives the action. Now, the cookies were baked by whom? The cookies were baked by Stella, which is now our object. And that is how passive voice works. But sometimes the person or thing who is doing the action is unspecified or unknown. For example, the hospital was built in the 1950s. The hospital was built in the 1950s by whom? The one who did the action is unspecified, yet it is still in passive voice. Let us try this. Tell whether the sentence is in active or passive voice. Remember the patterns? Here are the answers. Now that you all know the difference between active and passive voice, let us now transform active voice to passive voice and vice versa. But remember, changing the sentence is only possible if there is an object in the sentence. What do we mean by object again? It answers the question who or what.
How to change a sentence in active voice to passive voice. For example, Gabe sells cakes. Let us identify its parts first. Gabe is our subject. Our verb is sells. Then our object is cakes. Can we transform it into passive voice? Yes. In changing active voice to passive voice, we must follow this given pattern. Object, helping verb, verb, by, subject. Let's get the object first. Our object is cakes. Then we need a helping verb. What are we going to use? These are our choices. But how are we going to know which helping verb is appropriate in our sentence? Sell is one of our irregular verbs, right? And its principal parts are the following. We have the present, past, and past participle. Where is the word sell placed in the given principal parts? In present. Correct. So the helping verb that we are going to use is either is or are. Now let us look on our first word, cakes. Is it only one or many? Is it singular or plural? The answer is plural. Therefore, we are going to use the helping verb are. Now we need the past participle of the verb, which is sold. Remember, in passive voice, we are always using the past participle form of the verb. Let us now add the preposition by and copy the subject Gabe. Now we have our sentence in passive voice. Cakes are sold by Gabe. Now let us try to change the sentence in passive voice to active voice. Let us follow this pattern. Subject, verb, object. Who did the action? My neighbor. My neighbor is our subject. Next is the verb. But what are we going to use? We are going to depend on the helping verb used, which is where. It is plural and written in the past tense. Now this is our main verb. Let us look on the principal parts of the word adopt. We are looking on the past tense of the word adopt, which is adopted. So the main verb that we are going to use is still adopted. And lastly, the object, which is the dogs. Since we are changing it into active voice, the helping verb and the preposition are not included. So we have, my neighbor adopted the dogs.
Here is the summary of today's lesson. Active and passive voice are the two types of voice of the verb. When we say active voice, the subject performs the action, while in passive voice, the subject receives the action. If you have any questions regarding our topic, feel free to ask it in our Google Classroom. That's all for today. Goodbye, class.